All right, guys. Welcome back to the show. Before we get started today, just wanted to say, because we don't run ads or anything, we only have one fee, and that's if you learn something, you enjoy the show, please share the show, leave us a rating on whatever platform you listen to, Spotify or iTunes. So, but today we have a special guest. Today we have a husband-wife team, Michael and Leah Slaughter. They own a property management company. They've been longtime investors, lots of experience, and so we wanted to bring them on. With me. Be definitely great because we haven't had a husband wife team, but we have, it's us, but husband wife team that's been doing it for quite some time. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of talk about that too. So let's start there. So just kind of talk a little about you guys and introduce yourselves to everybody and how you guys got started and take it away.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having us. We appreciate you having us on. We love giving interviews, especially talking about how we got here, because that's what we do, right? We tell people how we got here to help them do the same. So Michael was a corporate manager at PetSmart, and we bought our first house at 18, and we had an agent who didn't want to let me negotiate. And so we bought the house, we closed on the house. Of course, I did negotiate. Anyone who knows me knows that I wasn't going to take that for an answer. Yeah. And we're laying in bed, and he says, I could do it better. I'm going to go into real estate.
and I did. I was a corporate manager working well over 90 plus hours. And they actually started utilizing me to do different things, including opening new stores, scouting out real estate sites. So in doing so on my breaks and all, I was taking my classes. This is all prior to the crash of 06, 07, 08, and 09 that we kind of experienced. So the market was at its highest points that we had seen. And I was taking my classes, getting through them as quick as I could, and basically passed my test, gave my 2 weeks notice, and took my vacation for the last 2 weeks of it. So
that's awesome. I got to ask, so you mentioned 18. So were you guys high school sweethearts, and that's kind of how you guys met originally, or?
Middle school.
Oh man, we went way back.
Yeah.
That's even.
I told him within like 3 weeks of meeting we were going to get married. So I didn't scare him off, but I'm a big believer. I'm Jewish. We call it basheret. When you know something's right or something's meant to be, just Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't listen to that voice a lot, but I certainly do. And I knew.
Yeah. So what were you? So he was in PetSmart. What about you? What were you doing at that time as far as work? Did you kind of do a situation where you kind of helped support? Obviously, when you go into real estate, new agents, it's rough sometimes. So did you kind of do like this, support him while he built that up, or what'd that look like?
Oh, let me give you the rest of the story. So we were original sellers on Amazon. I started my first company at 13, building websites for musicians, and I did guys on the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. So we were kind of always business minded. At 15, we were sellers on Amazon, buying books from discount bookstores brand new and selling them for $20, $30 more than what we bought them for on Amazon. Then we went over into electronics on Amazon. And this was back when Amazon was brand new and nobody knew what it was. And so we would go buy the new iPod when it came out and sell it on Amazon for hundreds of dollars profit over beyond what we got them for. So we kind of started businesses younger. I was still doing online sales when he went into real estate. And he went in February 06, and I think I got in by May. It was like, if you're going to be doing this, I'm doing it too. And it was crazy. He started walking doors. We got investors in our first 2 months. And then we landed the exclusive flat fee listing contracts for salebyowner.com, owners.com, started doing short sales with AmeriQuest and Countrywide before they imploded. So we got in very early, a lot of great connections, very well known very quickly. And so certainly that helped propel us to where we are today.
My first closing was 45 days after being licensed.
Oh, wow.
So there wasn't a whole lot of downtime as far as that goes. We were hustling it from the very beginning.
That's awesome. Yeah. I asked that because you guys, you work with agents and stuff, and that mindset. Obviously, you did not have that. You had the accountability mindset. You had all the mindset necessary to take off fast. But you see sometimes agents, they just don't have that. They're kind of like, "What do I do? Tell me what to do next." So. But it sounds like you guys we would have got along in middle school, man. I hustling. I like that. So, so you guys, you pretty much just took off out the gate. It was just from your hustling mindset. You just said, "Hey, we're just going to grab this and go get it." So what got you into rentals? At one point did you guys kind of, go from, buying the house and, to having your license to, honey, let's buy some property and hold on to it?
So some of that started from just the sheer point that numbers make sense. People don't. So when I started in the real estate industry, working with first-time home buyers was not my cup of tea. because you would show them the exact same floor plan in a new build neighborhood right next to each other, and somehow the one on the right was the right one and the one on the left was not when they're the same.
Yeah.
I couldn't wrap my head around that. There's no logic. But when it comes to rentals and investments, numbers are what they are. And so you're not buying the property based on, oh, I like the way the sun comes in this kitchen window slightly better than the next door one, but more so of, well, what do the numbers do?
Yeah. Yeah. So it made more sense for you. You enjoyed working with numbers and not working with emotions.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and it's not like investors don't have emotions, right? It's
Right.
big things we teach is don't get attached to your properties. We have one that Michael's been attached to for years, and it's taken me almost a decade to convince him to sell it. But yeah, it was really interesting. So we bought our first house, we renovated it, we adopted our first child, and 2 years later went back to go adopt 2 more kids and realized we were going to need more space. So we went and bought a bigger home, adopted those 2 kids, realized what we thought was more space was not enough space, went and bought a bigger house. And so we just kept turning things into rentals. And so we spent the next 7-8 years making our clients millions. We represented over 1,000 investors. We're sitting around in 2016 talking, why are we not buying rentals? We're stockpiling cash. We're living this lavish lifestyle. Why are we not investing in something other than the stock market? And it was just time. Time was a commodity. We were very busy. We never expected to have the type of success as young as we did. We've been very blessed. But one day, I think we just kind of realized, I think we were on our way back from the casino. And I said, if we weren't going to the casino, each one of these trips would pay for a quarter of a down payment on a house. And we stopped going to the casino and started buying real estate. And we now own 40 million in real estate.
Yeah. Were you guys driving a Windstar and Choctaw?
Choctaw. Yeah. It's funny, as a property manager, it's really hard to escape. And so our close friends at the time, that was what they loved to do because they had no internet signal on their phone. And so none of us could get calls. And it was a good way to kind of get out of it. Now I've just learned to turn my phone on silent, and thankfully I have great staff to take those calls.
Yeah.
But back in the early days, it just wasn't that easy.
You're always tied to it.
Yep.
Always tied to it. So what, so as far as just property wise, what do you guys, everybody has their thing, right? We've talked to Jawad, and we had him on the show, and he's like, I hate multifamily. He was telling us the stories about
us too.
Yeah. He's like, I hate multifamily. He was telling a story about a hooker, getting in a fight with some pimp and a hooker and whatever. It's for you guys.
Sounds like Jawad.
Yeah. What do you say would be, what do you guys prefer the most, and what do you hey, I really don't care for that, or what does that look like for y'all? What do you like to spend your time on?
Well, we hate multifamily, so I'll piggyback on that. I hate commercial. I hate anything that's not residential, single family. Now, I own a bunch of multifamily. I would rather not. And it's because the cost factor, the time factor, so we have our own property management company, right? So I've got a team of, I think we're at 48, 49 people. And so every property I have that's difficult, time consuming, stressful, it piggybacks on my team's stress that they already have from being in property management. And what we find is that multifamily, the juice just isn't worth the squeeze, not as an owner and not as a property manager. The risk is higher, turnover is greater. There's more damages that are done by the tenants in those properties because they're less likely to have been homeowners. Most of us that invested apartments were doing Class C, Class D that we're renovating to look like Class A, but you could slap lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. And so, it's just one of those things that we went into it. We've made great money on them in terms of equity play, but the cash flow is very difficult in multifamily. And so we really have stuck to single family, 1 to 4 family. That is what we teach. That is what we sell. And so we really have focused the last 3 years on pretty much all 1 to 4 family. And prior to that, we dabbled in multifamily. We dabbled in flips. We owned some commercial, but again, stuff that we bought as part of packages, not stuff that we really believe in.
Yeah, it was more if somebody would slide a commercial in and the deal was so good, we would get stuck with it. But when you look at it on a multifamily scale, it goes back to what I was talking about, emotions versus numbers. When you're in a multifamily scenario, one tenant who becomes emotional about something can ruin an entire building's reputation. And so it just becomes more of a headache because you are dealing with so many people in a confined space. And then just generally the exit strategy on them. When you go to get out of them, there's a lot more buyers for a house than there are for an apartment building.
Right. It's fast exit.
Yes.
And if you have an issue, it's going to affect so many people. So if water's out, you're not just getting one tenant that's calling you, you've got the entire building. And a lot of things are outside your control. Like, I'll give you an example. We have an apartment that has a roof being replaced right now. We're doing 2 buildings of roofs, and they couldn't finish in one day. So they tarped the roof, sealed it all up, went to bed, and the storm blew the tarp off in the middle of the night, ripped it off. And so we've got the entire top floor flooded out. And so again, one thing doesn't just affect one tenant, it affects every tenant. And so for me, it's just much more difficult, and the cash flow is not there. And you went back 4 or 5 years where you could pick these apartments up dirt cheap and then they tripled overnight. Yeah, we all made great money on the equity, but then if you can't get rid of them, well, then you're stuck in these properties that don't cash perform well. And that's where the problem comes. And so we've been warning about the multifamily market and the bridge loans that everyone's been doing, and talking about buying with low to no cap rates. I mean, I've stood on stages next to people. I've been on panels. I've run panels at IMN for the last 3 years where this is what's happening. And I've been up there saying, y'all need to be careful. The multifamily market's going to implode because of what's happening. And what are we seeing right now? The multifamily market's imploding.
Yeah,
and so same thing we saw with commercial and COVID. People have to have a place to live. And so multifamily is better than commercial, but multifamily is higher risk. And when there's a single family option, why go into something that's just more difficult?
And it's the general philosophy, and the reason why we don't do commercial, and there's a lot of people who make a lot of good money in it, but it's the idea behind the fact that, generally speaking, you can choose not to start a business, and so you might not need that office space, but most people won't choose not to live somewhere. They don't want to be out on the street, so they would want somewhere to have to live. And if you have a choice, COVID showed us that. What we saw was a mass exodus from multifamily in COVID, because after spending, if you were in Dallas County, 3-4 months locked in your little 600 square foot apartment, you went stir crazy because you weren't allowed to go out. We saw a mass exodus of those individuals moving to houses. So they had a yard, they had a space, and definitely exiting the big cities and going to the suburbs.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's necessities. You're dealing in necessities. You don't have to have not everyone has to have a warehouse or a space to lease commercially or whatnot, or retail or any of that. But yeah, you're right. You have a place to live. You got to, and a house is going to be, and I like what you said about the exit strategy, because that's something her and I've talked about is that, when you start a business, most people start any business, they start it for what? To make a bunch of money, but they don't think, how do I get out of this when I'm done? When I want out, how do I get out? And well, single family is one of the easiest ones to get out. It moves the fastest. So, and of course, we saw that, obviously we saw it in COVID, things move really quick. Things aren't the same now. They've adjusted, but it does. The exit strategy, I agree with you, is there a lot better than like commercial, where something sits for, you could have something for lease for a year and nothing. You just like, somebody come along and take this.
Lease it, you've got all that TI, right? So it's going to take you 4 to 5 years to start making money on a tenant. Commercial, they're happy with a 10% return. Everything that we do is pretty much infinite returns because we have more money out of it than we ever put in it. And so single family is just a very different beast. We preach a 2 to 6 year model where you buy cheap, you let it appreciate, cash flow in the meantime, and then you 1031 and keep doubling and doubling. So we take regular people and we retire them based on that model. You can't do that with apartments. You could for that 3-year period. And the problem is all of these syndicators are out there touting their numbers from the last 3 years. And I'm telling people, you need to be really careful, because that track record cannot be duplicated. You were an idiot if you lost money the last 3 years in real estate. Yeah. Anyone could make money in real estate. And at the end of the day, now those days are over. And they're going to come back. We're going to come back with a vengeance, because we're in the greatest housing shortage that we've ever had in the history of our country. And it's only getting worse. It's compounding. And we are in the metro that is going to suffer the most from this housing shortage. So as investors, there's going to be another crazy swoop. Everything's going to pick back up. Rates are going to come down. We're going into a election year where they have to make things look better. And so, this is going to be another time where we're going to be out there warning people, you need to be careful. This is short-lived. It's not sustainable. And multifamily, it's just, people are overpaying. They're doing loan types that come due right as rates are coming up. It's just too volatile. And the bigger piece is everything is an equity play. No one's out there buying stabilized apartments, right, and making great returns. You're making your return when you're doing that equity play. And when you have an equity play, that means you have to have an exit on a refinance or a sale. And you just can't bank on rates to keep doing what we need them to do. One person goes on social media and says one thing, everything tanks. We have one president that doesn't do what some of us think they should do, or the other way around. You just can't control what's going to be the market in 2 to 4 years. It's too volatile.
And that's a general philosophy across the board on all investment vehicles, is we're in a new age. 30 years ago, if somebody wanted to truly tank a stock, it took quite a bit of work to do that. They might get on a news station and hopefully that gets picked up nationally if they did something. But in today's world, Warren Buffett or Elon Musk can tweet out one thing and send the stock either climbing or tanking just because they know they're a large buyer in the market. And so that can affect so many things. Well, it works the same on interest rates. Those investors are looking at it. Well, the Fed's rumored to do this. Oh no, we need to tighten up, or we need to loosen up because we're not going to be able to do what we want. It's the same philosophy. So you have to be nimble and be willing to move and shake. And part of what Lee and I have done to change our philosophy from a lot of people is we don't just go up and teach people on how to do something. We've done it. And so we do the exact same thing we recommend somebody else to do. And, we're right alongside. If we recommend a market, well, we already own property. We've tested it first to make sure.
Yeah.
And, years ago, we were the ones out there telling people flipping is great for short term, but it's not an investment strategy. And somebody finally said, well, have you ever done it? Well, no, but I've learned a lot about it. So then what did we do? We went out and we flipped. We spent 6 months flipping houses. So we knew the ins and outs of it. So we could really say why it was such a negative as a fact and not just a theory.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way that we've always processed everything is we want to do it too. We're right there with everybody. We built a portfolio doing this and it works. And we love what we do because it is every day is something different.
Yeah, that makes sense. You want to be on the front line. You want to be able to say, "Hey, I did it," and this is exactly why I wouldn't do it again, or why you should do it again. So let me ask this: as far as what you see now, obviously you guys started, you started before everything kind of went, before the mortgage crisis and all that. So what do you see similar now, and maybe what's going on, or from then and then what's going on now? Do you feel like they kind of have some similarities? I read a thing that. The reason I said Metroplex put a thing out that said, what was it, home prices declined. Yeah. So I'm just, you guys' take on that, what's your thoughts on kind of how things look now versus what they did, 2008, 9, 10?
So it's interesting. I read that yesterday and I almost posted it and wrote a rebuttal. And then I decided, you know what? People are going to think what they're going to think. Yes, we're down from the people paying $200,000 over asking in the city of Dallas. That wasn't really the value. And so it looks down. What you really should be looking at is, okay, so Dallas is down 2% from 200,000 over asking. Mm-hmm. How much up does that mean we are? Now, the markets we're working, they're still up. Like Grayson County is still up almost 6% year over year. So it's very misleading when you look at an article or a news piece that's on a small area that's really a big area. So when you say DFW is down, well, what does that really mean? DFW is comprised of 40 different cities and suburbs, over 8 million people, 2 hours to drive from one end to the other. Fort Worth is not doing the same as Dallas. Dallas isn't doing the same as Plano. Anyone trying to buy a home in Frisco, Plano, Grayson County, Collin County, we all know how crazy it is right now. Would I want to be owning and buying in the center of Dallas where things have dropped a little bit because you've got population loss? Of course not. But I don't own in Dallas. I don't buy in Dallas. Mm-hmm. I've got 40 million in real estate and I don't own a single thing in Dallas. I can count on one hand how many I own in Dallas County. Yeah. And so it's all about looking at hyper local markets. And that's one of the big things we teach, because you turn on the news and it talks about the national real estate market is crashing. Well, no, there is no national real estate market. We are in the safest, the least volatile, and the most insulated market in the United States. I 1000% believe that.
We did a mastermind at our home. It's been a month or so ago, and I had people from all over the country here, and even somebody from another country, having a conversation with them. And I was discussing hyperlocal markets, and one of them actually made a very interesting comparison that I hadn't considered. We call it DFW, and like Leah said, it can be 2 to 4 hours to get across our metro. I mean, depending on what it is. Mm-hmm. And if you were to take actual distance, it's almost the same as LA to San Francisco. They don't call the LA market and include San Francisco. They don't include San Francisco and LA. And when you look at it, though, they will hype us all together. And generally speaking, like she said, they will talk about the market is down, but they don't talk list price to list price very often. Mm-hmm. And if you look at that, even in the past, last summer, for instance, when a list price was one price, people were paying $200,000-$300,000 over. There were a lot of caveats within that. We knew that market wasn't going to last. Anybody who had any knowledge in finance and real estate knew 2% interest rates were not going to last. It was a unicorn. Mm-hmm. And I'm here to say they're probably never coming back. We will not see those in our lifetime. It was not sustainable. And it's a new norm that we have to adapt to. And we're still seeing in a lot of things that we put on the market, multiple offers are coming in. We're still seeing that. We're still seeing properties fly. people are just being more choosy in the market that they elect to move to. Kind of the same when you see the mass exodus of people from the West Coast here. And we talk about free data a lot. The greatest thing is we could get so much free data in today's world. And one of those is U-Haul. U-Haul provides us a lot of free data that people ignore because you get to see where somebody checks out a truck and where they return it. We know where people are going based off of that. And you see that most of those people moving from the West Coast are not moving to Dallas. They're not moving to Fort Worth. They are returning their U-Hauls in suburbs because they're moving to the suburbs. They don't want the big cities anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, and one of the things I will touch on is why this is not '08. In '07, '08, all the way back to really '02, '03, anyone could get a house. You didn't have to have a history. You didn't have to have verifiable income. So I don't need to go into the roots of why it all happened. But the bottom line is that they were getting people into homes that had no business being in homes, and then they were packaging them as good loans. And so we created a banking crisis, a real estate crisis, a financing crisis. It was really the worst thing that you could possibly imagine is what happened. We're nowhere near that. The average American has more equity in their home right now than ever in history. Most Americans have 30 to 40% minimum equity, and they're all in rates below 4%. Like 70% of Americans are in interest rates that they'll never be able to replicate. So supply and demand plays a role, right? We've got this housing shortage, and so supply is going to remain low, so demand's going to remain high. But really, it's just bare basic economics. They're not going to move. They're in too low of rates. They're not bad buyers because they actually had to qualify. So everything that happened can't really happen again, at least not based on what the current metrics and current laws are. I won't say that they couldn't get stupid again and start letting any blood type get a home, but I don't see that happening. Where I will disagree a little bit is I do think it's possible we could get back down to really low interest rates. I think that, and I don't want to speak politics and I won't, but I do think that if Trump does somehow manage to get elected again, I do think rates are going to come back down. I think any Republican that gets in office is going to try to bring rates down. And I think it's entirely possible the Democrats will too. And that's because they want to spur that economy once they get inflation under control. The problem is, as long as we're printing money, we're going to compound this issue. And so every time we do benefits, entitlements, incentives, all these things to try to, make better what they've caused with inflation, we're just circulating more money in the market. And that's what caused all this in the first place. And so I think we're in unprecedented times for a lot of reasons, but the way that we are handling the printing of money and the giveaway of money is going to continue to be a problem, whether it's bailing out a bank, whether it's bailing out American citizens with these, checks that we're giving. We're putting so much money into circulation that it's naturally going to cause an inflation crisis. Where I think things are going to change is that inflation target of 2% is going to change. And I think that we're going to see more cycles like this where it's going to be volatile, it's going to be up and down, it's going to be touch and go. And I think it's probably going to be more frequent than what we've been seeing. You look at the last 70 years, only 6 years was real estate down. And that's pretty astronomical when you think about it. There's no safer investment than real estate. Right now, it's 100% about doing the right time in the right market that doesn't have the volatility, not the bubble markets, and being in a loan that you can sit in until you can afford to sell. And that is going back to why multifamily is such a problem. These adjustable rate mortgages, they were on single family in the last crash. Now where we're seeing those is in the commercial market. So that's going to be your multifamily, your commercial. That's where you're going to see the crisis. What won't happen? That will not affect single family.
But those numbers will go into a real estate figure, and you have to be, again, hyper local. And I think we're going to get even more hyper local on type of real estate, because most of your figures are not calculating just residential real estate. They are real estate. And when you hear a news article, it's real estate. Well, that's commercial, that's industrial, that's car washes, that's multifamily. And I do agree, if we see something, it's going to be in that realm. That's where those loans were given out that suddenly are coming due. And we're not talking a $200,000 house. We're talking like the massive foreclosure that happened in Houston just recently. $229 million are the size of some of these portfolios that they can't refinance. And so they end up becoming foreclosure products. And banks are not in the real estate business. They don't want to hold. And that's where we're going to see the decline. But I don't see that affecting directly the residential real estate market.
I actually think residential is going to continue to climb to heights in markets like DFW that we've never seen. And what's interesting, I read this morning that one of the large landlords of a huge hotel in California is about to default on their loan. So now we're starting to see hotels affected too. I think it was a Hilton.
Yeah. So let me ask this. So just kind of go back to Dallas a little bit and just different. So you guys, you prefer one? I'm curious to hear about why not Dallas. I know some people like it. she keeps telling me I'm not buying in Dallas. All of our stuff's in Tarrant County. So
Yep.
but she keeps
Yeah.
telling me no Dallas and no Dallas.
hood.
And I grew up in Irving, so I Irving is home for me. I love Irving. But I got to hear it. What for you guys? Like you're like no Dallas. What is it about Dallas that says hell no, we're not doing that?
So there's a lot. I'll go to the most recent kind of big red flag. Think of COVID. Think of what happened in the COVID restrictions and the differences between the counties that you saw. Which ones locked you up and have prevented you from being able to complete business, and which ones didn't?
Yeah.
Dallas County was very much in that basket of you're not doing anything. And then you go hyper local to Dallas, they were more restrictive to where right now the city of Dallas still has eviction requirements that you have to meet from COVID. Even today, that in argument, even the attorney general's office has issued opinions to state you can't legally do this. But Dallas County Justice of the Peaces are like, well, the city of Dallas says so I'm going to follow and enforce city law, which is not a JP's job. They are county elected for county in statutes and for state laws, Class C and civil. They are not supposed to do ordinance enforcement, and they do. And the city of Dallas is passing them. The city of Dallas most recently tried to do a rent control, and that didn't make it. But they did try, and the state of Texas was standing by, ready to sue them to stop rent control in a city. So when you look at those types of ideas and ideologies that run, it doesn't meet up. And then, the second one is, I would say, would you take your family into, say, central Dallas at 9:30 at night and walk down a street? Well, chances are probably not. And when you look at stuff like that, that puts a high risk for a property that you have in that area. And when you have something like that, that's going to cost you more to maintain, more to insure, more to replace if you have vandalisms and thefts and homeless issues and just general crime that can affect a property. And so, I'm kind of in the same boat. I was born and raised in Mesquite, so that was home. I knew the stomping grounds. It's a totally different city today than it was when I grew up there. I will tell you that generally speaking, there's good parts and bad parts of every city. The closer into the city of Dallas you get, the more sketchy it becomes, and so you have to be careful in those markets. The last thing that I take into account is the fact that more likely, in the event of an economic situation that occurs, major cities are going to feel it more than suburbs. When something happens, people tend to, I almost say scatter, and that's what happens, is if something happens like COVID, people tend to scatter. So you saw a mass exodus from the Dallas zip codes to the suburban zip codes because they didn't like it. If politics shift, you see that mass exodus again. You see, also you tend to find that suburbs have more landlord-friendly policies and laws than those in major cities, just based on, again, their ideologies of the major cities and the governments within them.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the jobs are coming into the suburbs, right? So we want to be where there's this need, where there's a higher percentage of need. And so that's what the suburbs offer. The other piece is the city doesn't have to continue to grow. Dallas doesn't need more gas stations. They don't need more restaurants. They don't need more shopping centers. These suburbs that we operate in, they do. And so we're kind of building in that equity play just by the city growing, the suburb growing. And so it's not just about appreciation, it's also about natural value increase because the city's physically worth more. And so by buying in these high growth areas, like anyone who was investing in Frisco 15 years ago is living like a king right now because we all knew it needed infrastructure. We were focusing on the new Silicon Alley up in Sherman Denison, Grayson County. It's our biggest market. And again, we've seen property values go up 150%. And so, it's all about what you're looking for and what fits your model. I know lots of people who make money in the inner cities. My rule is I won't buy something that I wouldn't let my child live in. And so that restricts most of Dallas itself.
You're like, kids, you're not living in Dallas. But mom, no.
Well, you say that my daughter's in an apartment in Dallas, but it's calling outside.
You're like, we're going to sell this. You're not, you buy it, we're selling it. Just don't even worry about it. Yeah. So what do you guys, so I know you mentioned Sherman stuff, and you don't have to get specific on cities, but are there certain counties that you prefer that you like the most? I mean, you're like, I like this place over this, or that you like to spend your time in as far as just personally, obviously, property management, you'll work in other cities, but your own, like, is there places that you guys enjoy, hey, I like to invest that, or,
So we currently live in Parker, and we have 2 acres here. Michael's mayor pro tem. We've been here almost a decade, and we just bought 35 acres on the southwest side of McKinney. So as close as you could be, but still be in McKinney. And we're building our dream home right now on 35 acres there. So that kind of quadrant, that northern Collin County side, is where we love and where we prefer. We probably spend half our days between Legacy West and that downtown McKinney area.
Yeah.
I feel like our whole day revolves around where we eat lunch. So, yeah. And, and I love Parker. I love where we live. It's a wonderful area, very safe. However, you have to go through East Plano to get anywhere. And East Plano, it still has some room to grow, and it doesn't have the restaurants and the infrastructure we want. Everything up on the north side by 75 121 does. And so that's kind of our hood, and we love it. And I was born and raised in Dallas, moved to Plano when I was a teenager. So I have that inner city love. What I don't love is traffic. And we don't really ever go in the city. We were talking about this the other day, when the last time we actually went to Dallas was.
Yeah.
We don't go anymore.
Yeah, we have a radio show, and I have to drive down there once a week to record because we do it at the station. And I will tell you that is the most miserable 2 hours of my life. Is that drive down. And, you talk about the areas that we like to invest in. Grayson County is one of them. Hunt County is one of them. I like some parts of Denton County. I'm not discriminatory in respect to which suburban counties we'll look at. Grayson holds a special part in my heart because they've made me a lot of money. Their city councils are very pro the methodologies that we employ. They are very pro employer. They're the ones who helped to get the TI facility up, and they're actually a little county that most people in North Texas didn't know about a few years ago are working to make us a forefront in the technology industry. And when you drive out there and you see, cattle and horses everywhere, you're thinking, what's so tech about this? When we did one of our bus tours, of course, a lot of people come from California. We have a huge Californian base because they like where they live with the weather. They hate everything else about it. So they want to put their money somewhere else.
Yeah.
And having these conversations and teaching them and tell them, Grayson County, here's a map, and this is going to be the next tech infrastructure. 5, 6, 7 years ago, they were laughing at us. I'm like, no, watch it. TI's already up there. Finisar's starting to break in. This is going to be it. And now the first wafer manufacturing plant is being built out there to manufacture the first one in the United States. And how many years?
20 years.
Yeah. That they built to make Grayson County a technology infrastructure. And if you're looking for a fun weekend, go up to Denison and go to downtown Denison for the weekend and just take a Saturday morning and stroll downtown. You will feel like Andy Griffith is going to come whistling down the street at any point. You're in Mayberry. They have so many places to eat. They have breweries and wineries and so many outdoor events. And this little, what most people think is a sleepy town, but they're putting their money back into it to make it better for their residents. And as long as they do that, it's good for investors because people want to live there. And they're really trying to capitalize on what Waco did with all of their downtown and Chip and Joanna Gaines, Magnolia Market, by trying to create their own versions of that up there. And it's, they don't have any HGTV stars up there, but they don't, we had a good friend of ours from California come in and we were touring her around. She's a partner of ours. She's a partner in our real estate fund. And we went up there and she wanted to take a quick video because she thought this downtown was so cute. And she set her purse down on a bench out in front of a coffee shop. And we videoed and we got back in my truck and we started driving back. She's flying out that afternoon and we get back to Plano and she's like, I don't know where my purse is. Well, she had left it on that bench. And so we called the coffee shop and the coffee shop attendant walked out there, got her purse, which was still sitting there. Nobody had touched it on a busy Saturday afternoon. Brought it inside, said, I'll hang on to it till you can come get it. Sent somebody over there to get it for her, brought it back. Not only was her purse untouched, she even checked all of her cash was still there and her credit cards. It's like nobody had ever touched it. Could you do that in downtown Dallas?
Oh, no.
I mean, it's a good chance you could hold on to your purse and it's going to get.
I still have my purse.
It's gone.
I still have my purse, but my money's gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think HGTV might be waiting on you guys to call. That might be what it is, man. Y'all might need to make a call in HGTV for Denison Sermon.
I'm thinking not. I don't think someone wants to follow us around all day.
I told you the majority of our day is eating and making phone calls. It's not that exciting, but
sounds like
we've got an amazing team that does most of it, and we do love our areas. We look for that. We look for areas that remind us of home or a place that we could see living. And We don't live up north because all of our family's down here, but could I see us someday moving up to the Sherman Denison area? We've talked about it. It's very possible. It's such a fun and growing area that even though we don't live there, we spend a lot of time up there. We've chosen date nights to drive up there and go to downtown or eat at one of their cool restaurants that we don't have here, and walk the downtown and check out their antique shops and the different concerts that they do, and the ice skating ring they put on 3 times a year in the winter. I mean, it's a cool area.
It's really incredible. And their city council in Denison specifically is unlike anything I've ever seen. And it's a different pace of life, and being born and raised in the city and, working in this industry 80-hour weeks this will be our 18th year. It's nice to have a different pace. And I think COVID for us kind of shifted our focus. I mentioned that we had 3 adopted kids. Well, we just adopted another child last year. So we have 3 grown, and now we've got a 3-year-old. And we kind of just went back to what's important to us, what's important to where we want to be in our time. And I feel like the vibe is really where we're trying to be and what we're trying to do. I think if you'd asked me 5 years ago where we'd be today, I didn't think we'd be where we are. But if you'd asked me 3 years ago, right before COVID, where I thought we'd be today, I thought we'd be well beyond even where we are, because I had such a hustle. And I just, wealth is a hard thing, right? You chase it and then you have it, and then you want more and you want more and you want more. And what COVID did for us is kind of say, all right, enough is enough. You can pay your bills, you can live your lifestyle, you can help others, you can make a difference in the community. It's enough. And now you can start to back off and buy your time back. And so that's really what we've done. So like you joke about HGTV, we've gotten calls before, and we've gotten offers to do all sorts of different things. And even talking about the radio show, we had the conversation last week before last, do we even want to give up 2 hours a week to a radio show? And it's just, time is a commodity. And the older I get, and when I was younger, I was very sick. I have lupus, and I've been very blessed that my health has been good, but I almost died when I was 22. And so I think we just all have perspective. And the older I get, the more I find that money is not everything, and chasing money is not everything. And at some point, you just have to be happy where you are and sustain it, obviously, and continue to make a difference. But getting beyond where we are now is really not where we are anymore. It's educating others and helping others get to where we are. And so we started doing mentorships a few months ago, and we're not charging what most of the other gurus are charging. And that's because it's really about making a difference and helping others do what we've been able to do. You ask some kid that used to sleep in a living room without power because they were so poor, and me coming from a family who had all its money embezzled and lost. And so I think looking at where we are now and what we've built and being able to do it with your best friend, we've just been so blessed. We're really so blessed. And there's just no other way to say it.
Absolutely. Family is very important. She said we adopted 3 kids. We didn't adopt 3 babies. So all the first 3 kids we adopted were through DFPS, the Department of Family and Child Protective Services. They came from hard backgrounds. They were not infants. So most of them had experienced some forms of abuse, neglect. And so we tried to change their lives. And, I'm very proud of all of my kids and what they're doing and what they've been able to accomplish. We just finished my son's graduation for the United States Army. He finished basic training and has moved on to his advanced training. So they're going out now and making their differences in the world. And we want the same for our 3-year-old that we have, is to spend that time. And we sat down kind of during COVID and sat up and said, part of what we teach is set your goals, because, everybody says, I want to be a billionaire. Obviously, that's the big joke. But when you sat down and say, what are my actual goals? Most people's goals are very attainable. And it's just, how do you get there? And we never really sat down and said, okay, what is our goal? What is our point that we're happy at? And we kind of did that. And I told her that I wanted a farm. I wanted a small farm. And she's like, well, I want to live near the city. I'm not living out in the middle of nowhere. We kept looking, and we had a great lake house that we enjoyed spending some weekends at. We bought it kind of at a low point in the market. The market went insane last summer. Actually, that one went insane the year before that last summer.
Middle of COVID.
People wanted to get away. This was 5 acres out on a beautiful lake on a hillside, and we got an offer to purchase it, which was way more than what we had in it. We sold it and said, what do we want to do? And she agreed to let me go in and start constructing our little farm. And it's
35 acres, y'all. This is not a farm. We have a full-time ranch hand to mow and to maintain.
We do, and I've got my cows and my horses and our ducks now, and it's just minutes in, so it was a win-win for both of us. She got the area she wanted, but it was about hitting our goals and then deciding, well, we're not done by any means, but we don't need to keep doing the insanities of it all. We don't need to keep doing the TV shows that they want, or, how often do we want to host radio shows? How much do we want to do? And we got back to it and said, well, really, we enjoy teaching. At the end of the day, my staff is good at property management. I want to teach. And Leah has always loved teaching. And so that's what we do, is we get out and we teach now.
And we teach for free every month. And, we have people come that they've been in the same job for 20 years. They've never done any type of investing. We have kids that are right out of high school that come. It's just, and if you change one life, and I know this sounds really just ridiculous, but seriously, if you change one life, that's going to power you through. And I know we're changing lives. I know people like us. Jawad's a great example too. He's out there teaching, educating. He doesn't charge for it. And it's not because we all have something to gain. There are ways you can work with us and we can get paid off of it. But most of what we're talking about is literally telling you, this is point A, this is Z where we are now, and this is how we got there. And anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. Some people can do it faster than others, of course, but anyone can do it.
Yeah. And our client base, our student base is, we have engineers, doctors, lawyers. We even have other real estate brokers, real estate agents who do this, but they don't do our niche and they want to learn more. And they come to us for that. Leah talks about changing lives. Well, in the crash, so many people, my big running joke is their 401ks became 4Ks because the stock market crashed. Literally it lost everything. And these were people who were retired who had to go back to work. And we found it amazing how many of those people we took back and got them back into retirement a lot faster than they thought they would, redeploying what money they had left, redeploying their IRAs, redeploying their 401ks into real estate, and how many people we helped retire. And the average person that we deal with, they're not, getting driven around in their Bentleys to their mega mansions. They are people who run a regular life. They have a 9-to-5 job, or some of them even more than that. Teachers, engineers. We have a lot of engineers, doctors who everybody think are super wealthy. Well, most of the time they have no retirement plan. And so we are able to help them finally retire. We're able to help these people achieve their goals. And that's what we get the joy from, is changing those lives and doing that.
Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I know for us, COVID did that. We stopped and looked and we're like, this shit's too crazy. We got to slow down a little bit and start doing something.
Enjoying life.
Enjoying it, because we spent so many years hustling and building and growing, and you're like, if it wasn't for the real estate, we would have been screwed. But just looking back, going, man, like why are we? We had one of our businesses lose like 60% of it. Just it's not a real estate business. It's jiu-jitsu. We own a jiu-jitsu academy, and it just lost 60% of the students. We spent so many years building that thing up, and I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time. I love teaching, and you're like, you watch it just wash away. Had it not been for real estate, we would have been in trouble. But it made us, that same thing you just said. They're like, why? Like, why don't we just stop, slow and enjoy this? Let's walk to town. Let's actually do something more than just, hustle. So
it's our generation, I think, that was the most affected by COVID. And let me tell you why. We are the generation that grew up with the biggest drive, the biggest hustle, because we still knew old school. We still grew up in libraries. We still grew up before Google, but we grew up at the start of computers. And so, you look at statistics, our generation owns more businesses. More of us are billionaires. More of us have made extreme wealth. More of us are higher educated. Why is all of that? Well, we were extremely driven because the time period we grew up in was such astronomical change and growth, not only in us as a country, but also technologically, what we can do, the opportunities that were out there, creation of new job fields. And so I think we all are hustlers. We really are. And so we've been going since we were kids. It's just, I think we were so heavily affected because that is what the majority of our personalities were.
We had to actually make a phone call. That was
I know. And now I hate them. I'm like, why are you not texting?
Yeah, I'm like, we had to actually like get the cord out and drag it around. You know what I mean? And then that's if you
star 6 7.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, star 6 7. Yeah, you had to actually do all that stuff. So your people skills were better, right? Versus those that are afterwards. They're like, oh shit, somebody's calling me. I don't know what to do. I gotta
or I'm talking to someone. Where do I look?
What's eye contact?
In their eyes? It's crazy.
It's I was talking to somebody the other day and said today's generation, the new age generation, is very excited when the new iPhone comes out. That's when, or the new Android or whatever. In my generation, we were excited when we got the 50-foot long phone cord, because that means you could take the phone into your room. And if you got that one that lit up, that means you could take calls at night and mom didn't know. And it is a different world. And we are the generation, though, that is willing to ask why. And I think that, Leah touched on it. We're the most educated, and we are, but I don't think it's going to be the 4-year university education that we're talking about here. We are educated from the standpoint that, how did we get there? Well, how does that work? Well, now we can literally Google and probably watch some YouTube video on how that works. And, so many things when you look at it, I was working on my tractor the other day because I was having an issue with one of the pedals on it, and I knew it could be adjusted. I couldn't figure out how to do it. Well, I could go to YouTube, learn how to do it, and I was able to adjust the pedal myself and not have to do it. I was able to educate myself in a way that before would have been much more difficult. And so we do, and we have the experience of knowing what it was even before Google. Then it was Ask Jeeves, and before we could ask the little butler the answer to our question, or the little paperclip in Microsoft, which I miss. I don't know whatever happened to that guy. But before you could even get to that, we had to go look stuff up. We had to be willing to experiment and try. And we have all of that coming together where everything's not instant gratification.
Mm-hmm.
We're still the generation that, when you played in a sport, not everybody got a trophy.
Yep.
But, we learned that, but we still were able to play in sports and have a good time. So we've learned failure. We're okay with that. We know that things can fail and what we have to do to overcome that. And so it'll be interesting to see how history looks back on this generation. But a lot of the advancements that we're making today are kind of within our realm. And it's because we're the ones willing to say that, well, no, we're not happy with just this answer. Let's move on and figure out a solution.
We were back in 2006 buying leads from HomeGain and doing these flat fee listings, and nobody even knew literally half my family didn't even know what the internet was. And so it was a different way of doing things. It was a different way of thinking. And I think the disservice that now we've done to the younger generation is that they don't have those critical thinking skills. We were talking about just a couple of days ago, cassette tapes, and how we'd get so excited when our favorite song would come on the radio and we could record it on a cassette tape, but you had to time it just right. Everything wasn't perfect all the time. And I think, we're going down a rabbit hole, but I think that's why.
No, you're right.
But it's true. And I think this is why mental health is such a problem right now in this country, because all these younger generations that are struggling so terribly, everything has to be perfect all the time because they're used to everything being perfect. And then they're on social media, everything looks perfect and magazines are perfect. And there's no room for failure. And life is a series of failures. That's where we learn and that's where we get driven. And I just feel like we've lost that somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
And how you learn to cope.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. We have no skill set to be disappointed. None.
No, and one of my favorite quotes, I use it when I teach, is from Eleanor Roosevelt. And she says, learn from others' mistakes. You won't live long enough to make them all yourself. Mm-hmm. And it really is true. We're able to make those mistakes. We're able to learn from other people's mistakes because we saw them. And she's right. Facebook, everybody's life is perfect on social media, at the end of the day. And that's where a lot of people's false hopes and realities come from. They can't understand those failures. And so, I tried this, I failed, I'm never doing that again. In our industry and in real estate, sometimes you try something, you fail, you try something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The willingness to fail. That's a huge deal. I agree with that. And I don't think it is a rabbit hole. I think it's something that I'm sure I'm going to take a guess. Even though you teach real estate on a regular, I'm sure that part has to be talked about. It's just a requirement. There's right. I mean, I would assume that there's a lot of individuals that come in and they stop themselves. They don't believe they can do this. And if they don't have that part, it doesn't matter how much you've got over here. Yep. You can be educated all day long, but if you don't believe that you can do it, or you don't believe that you have, whatever, if the mind
pull the trigger.
Yeah. If the mindset's wrong, everything else is going to be screwed.
We tell people as property managers, we're a little bit of everything. We're attorneys, we're therapists, we're motivational speakers, we're crisis managers. We're a little bit of everything. And I think that at our core, property management's the backbone of everything that we do, not only for ourselves, but also for our clients. And I think having been property managers, literally growing up in this industry, this is, literally all I've ever done, aside from, selling stuff, which is really pretty closely tied and related. But I think having that property manager background and being able to shut it out, and I couldn't always shut it out, right? It's a very high stress profession, very high suicide rate, very high turnover rate. having done it so long, nothing's a 10 to me. I raised my kids that way. Is it a 10? If it's not a 10 on the scale of 1 to 10, if it's a 2 or it's a 3 or it's a 4, it's just not worth all this agony. It's not worth all this anxiety. And I kind of look at everything that way now. When something happens, if it's not good, it's like, is it a 10? When I got the middle of the night phone call about the tarp off and all my units splitting, it's like, okay, it's 3 a.m. There's absolutely nothing I can do. Put the tenants in a hotel. I have a team member who handled that, and I went back to bed. Yeah. Leah 2010 would have been panicking. And so it's some of this is you're going to get better at what you do as you become more comfortable with failure. And I think that it is a lot of what we teach. And a lot of what we do is really motivating people that you can do this. You don't have to work that 9 to 5. You don't have to be beholden, because I think we were all falsely raised that, oh, if you can just have $1 million, you're going to live like a king, or you work till 65 and retire. The government's going to take care of me. Yeah. And obviously neither of those things are true. And so we just kind of have to mold our thinking and mold our focus to make sure that we're doing what's good for us, and hopefully give back along the way of what's good for others too.
And you're right, 100%. We have to teach the real estate practice and what it is. And then there's a huge part that is that motivation that you can do it. You know, anybody can do this. You know, the poor kid without a trust fund from Mesquite was able to do this. Anybody can do this. You know, at the end of the day, there are different steps, and you have those people who are slow to act because they're scared, and you have to kick them into the first one. And when you get them there, then they realize, oh wait, I can do this, and they start a snowball effect, and then they start building and building and building, because again, it is something that anybody can do. You know, generally speaking, anybody who is at a point where they're looking at retirement, they're ready to start planning for retirement, can start looking at this, even if it is just starting with the education, learning, going to some free seminar, you know, and I tell everybody, whatever I teach, fact check me at the end of the day, because I cite everything that I do that to anybody you learn from. Fact check them, be okay with that, because they can learn something from you too. If something has changed or something is different, be part of it, be part of the community. Don't just go to the social drinking hours to do it. Go to learn, go to do something. You know, go to the classes on the weekend, spend a few hours to benefit yourself. And if you can do that, if you can work on yourself, because everybody needs a mentor, everybody needs somebody to look up to, everybody needs somebody to talk to.
There is no excuse to not be educated in today's world. The amount of free information at our fingertips is unbelievable. If I had had access to everything that we have now starting out, it just would have been so much easier. There is literally no excuse anymore.
You know, she goes back to that when we sold stuff, and we had one of the first independent bookstores on Amazon in this area, but then we had one of the first electronic sales groups on Amazon. When Amazon was still books, we were piggybacking off of them to sell stuff, and we started selling these things called iPods, which we were getting from the Apple store in Dallas because Texans didn't know what they were. We could sell them all over the nation through this service. And I remember one day I went to the one at Knox Henderson, because that store was still there, and I bought a bunch of them, and we were bringing them home, and we were packaging them to sell to these people, where I bought them for like $100 and we were selling them for $500. And we were looking at each other going, what are these? And I'm like, I don't know, but people pay $500 to put them in a box.
No idea.
I didn't know what they were. I just knew people would pay for them.
You were the best dealer. You didn't smoke your own supply.
No. I've never owned an iPod.
Yeah,
to this day, never. I've got an iPhone, so I guess kind of close, but I've never owned an iPod. I sold a ton of them.
Best dealer in the world. I love it. I want to ask, so just touch a little bit on this, because you know, we've talked with numerous different individuals on the podcast, and like I said, you guys are one of the first husband-wife team we work together. Obviously, we've been husband-wife team for a while, but I want to hear you guys' take, like, you know, what it's like working together, and, you know, just being a husband-wife team. And he's like, maybe we should.
So I can count on two hands the number of days in the last 3 years we haven't spent together. We are together all day, every day, literally. If he's not doing, so you're a lieutenant, captain, and I don't know what your rank is anymore in Collin County, and he works for the constable's office. And so he does that sometimes, and then he does the city council meetings at night, but we're never apart. So if anyone can sit up here and speak and say you can work with a spouse, I think that we can do that.
You know, it's even more during COVID. Again, when we were figuring out what we wanted to do, we decided we wanted to travel. Well, COVID was a really bad time to decide that. So what did we do? We went out and bought a 40-foot long RV, And we're going to do it that way because, again, she had lupus and COVID was coming out. We still didn't know what it was. So having a bathroom, you could get places, you could camp. So we got this RV. And what I tell everybody is if a marriage can survive backing up an RV, you can do anything. When you've got a wife screaming out there telling you to arc it, you have no idea what that means. You can do that, then I think everything else is a cakewalk. And so at the end of the day, other than the fact she locks the front door so I can't leave, we're never. So seriously, send help. No, that's not really. It is something that we've been together our entire lives, and she knows my buttons and how to push them. I know hers, and sometimes we still do that for the fun of it. But we've understood, we've experienced everything together. So we tend to know what each other's going to reply to something before it ever happens. And so something comes up, we don't really have to powwow anymore to determine how we're going to do something. She knows what my response is going to be, and I know what hers is going to be. And so it makes things a lot easier. And it makes it a lot easier to understand each other's stresses. At the end of the day, we understand what this business is. And so it's not like somebody who's in one profession coming home and complaining about it to the spouse that does something else who has no idea what they're talking about.
It's, the other piece is, so you take a typical day, we're maybe apart 20 minutes a day. Does that sound about average? Yeah. So 20 minutes of a day, we're not sitting here talking to each other. That's how little time we spend apart. And I think because of that, we're not always on the same page, but we always know where a conversation's going to go. And part of that is ability that nothing that is a 10 5 years ago is a 10 today, right? So finances play a role in that. And so stress is not the same stress that it used to be for us. We're fortunate enough that that's the place that we're in. But if you go back to the beginning where it was deal to deal and things were tougher, it was hard. It was hard because, one of us would stress about something, then it would make the other one stress. And now we're both stressed. And then, you throw 3 special needs kids on top of that, and it just becomes a whole stress fest. But I think that you just kind of learn to work within whatever it is you do, whether you're a doctor and you've got patients on your table, whether you're in property management, whatever it may be, you just kind of have to let it go and leave it to God. And if you don't believe in God, then leave it to the universe or whatever you may believe in. But at the end of the day, there's just things we can't control. And so I think when you learn to kind of let go and learn that there's bigger things out there than just you, it really does help. And for us, we're both type A. We're both very strong personality, and you would think that would create a lot of clashing, but it really doesn't. It's quick clashes, but then, if you're married to your best friend and you're in love with your spouse, then you're going to work through whatever that may be. I think where you see spouses not working well together, especially in our industry, and I've seen it 100 times where they're together and then they get divorced and whatever, that their relationship just wasn't strong. And it's sad, but that just kind of is what it is. If you're truly working with, and I can already tell the two of you guys are your best friends. And
we spend a lot of time together, just like you guys. I mean, literally.
It's just different. And it's really hard to explain it to someone that hasn't had it. And I wish everyone did have this. And I know it doesn't exist for a lot of people ever. And so it's hard to explain, but it's just kind of like a yin and yang. It works.
Yeah. I knew as a teenager, I was like, I didn't know who, but I knew like growing up, because I had a mentor of mine that worked with his wife, and I was like, I want that. And so I knew I was like, I want to work with my wife. So yeah, I mean, everything from like, get up, it's time to eat breakfast, let's go, that's all right, let's watch. I mean, literally from sunset or sunrise to sunset. I get that. So let me ask this, like, personality. I know her and I are actually complete opposites. You said you're both type A. Are you guys are you guys kind of like opposite as far as personality and just different things? Or are you pretty similar? Like, what is that?
Michael's a total pessimist and I'm a total optimist.
Yeah, we are. And I am somebody who wants to do the things I want to do and will put off the things I don't. Yeah. She very much is the just tackle everything and take on everything for everybody. I'm the one who will hand something back to somebody who they give me to know, hey, it'd be easier if I did it, but instead I'm going to make you do it so you learn from it. So it depends on the circumstance too, as far as it is. She's deathly afraid of bugs. I could care less. So there's a lot of differences in a lot of ways we complement each other. I mean, I'm the one who kills the bugs, and she's the one who screams and runs out of the room.
And now our little one's running around, bug.
I think that helps, though. I think that helps if you have one that's more I'm the most optimistic. She's the more pessimistic, because as the optimist, you walk up and you're like, guess what we can do? And they're like, oh man, hold on. That's not. And you're like, no.
I'm still a realist. So different type of optimism, right? So I don't think everything's going to be peachy all the time.
Right.
Where the type of optimist I am is that I can see a positive in everything and nothing's a big deal to me. And I think probably if you had to pinpoint the one thing in our marriage that's hard, it's having a spouse that feels like nothing is a 10. And I truly feel like nothing is a 10. And it's hard to explain, but I think when you've survived death and you've been given the second chance at life with a debilitating disease that doesn't debilitate you, you're kind of like, nothing's a 10.
I am married to the woman who, when you break a leg, she will come in and go, oh, well, great. That's great. You didn't break both of them. So, and you're sitting there in agony because you broke a leg. I am married to that woman. She says she's a realist. In some ways she is. In some ways she is absolutely the ultimate optimist. Everything's going to be great. I'm the one who looks at it and goes, well, but what if it's not? What if this happens? And I'm saying that because this has happened 99% of the time. So if this happens, how do we respond?
I'm telling you, if there is 10 ways that something can go wrong, Michael has a plan and has already thought through every single one of them.
Yes. And I have a plan of what I'm going to do with each of those 10 items. And then I don't worry about them anymore because I'm like, oh, well, when those happen, I know I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that.
I know as an optimist, that was always the most frustrating thing, is to approach Misty and be like, hey, Misty, we can do this. And she's, as the optimist, you're like, damn, like don't burst the bubble, man. Just let it sit here for a little bit, okay? I did a lot of research on this. I'm leaning that way. I've already made the so that's
so who usually wins though? Who usually wins in your marriage?
I don't know. Misty's really passive. I'm not at all by any means. She usually just.
Oh, I don't know what that would be like.
She's extremely passive, like to the point of just whatever. And then so I don't know if we'd have
we just have to discuss it and come up with a plan.
Yeah, he's very passive. So I think that helps a lot. If she wasn't passive, we were screwed. I would say that.
You guys use trump cards? Because occasionally I'll pull a trump card.
No.
And not like Donald Trump. Like a Trump.
Yeah.
The old school Trump before Donald Trump.
I think Misty's too damn passive for that. The reason I say it is like there's just I could argue with a wall, like to a point, like, are you not going to respond? And she just walks away and comes back.
Okay, so I do that too. I don't want to fight. I don't like to fight.
Right. Yeah. We don't fight.
Yeah. No, you just stop talking.
Yeah.
I'm really good at staring out a window.
Yep.
Yeah, her too. She's the same way. Like
we'll just each think about it and come back to the table later.
Yeah. So let me.
And when he apologizes, then we come back to the table.
Yeah. So let me ask this, because this is something that we joke about just with our work and marriage and stuff. Is already had the meeting. I don't know if you guys have that. Like one of you already kind of had the meeting with yourself of what you're about to do, but you didn't consult the other. And then they're like, "Did you already
made up your mind? I already thought about it already."
We're never apart to be able to have a meeting in our own mind.
No, we're standing next to each other, and I already had that. I'm holding court. We're standing next to each other in the elevator. I'm holding court, and I'm like, I'm just, it's quiet.
I already thought it through.
I thought
we're doing this.
And then once I tell her, I don't know if you guys have that at all. Where you're like, you already had the meeting, honey. Why are we even trying to discuss the situation?
Yeah, we occasionally have there's something I want or I want to do. And so I'll just do it first and then come to her with the great idea of it. And then when she's like, well, I don't know, I'm like, I've already done it. So,
buying stuff. Yeah. Like when I show up and there's 4 classic cars here and I have nowhere to drive because they were all good deals.
I needed the tractor.
Yeah, and the expensive air-conditioned tractor he had to have. No, it's always when he's buying something, y'all. That's the only time he has a meeting of the mind in his own mind, because he knows I'm going to say no.
But I also have learned that there are times where she's absolutely not listening to me, like which Facebook, yeah. And when I get enough of those, I'll interject in there. Oh, and by the way, I did this. And, okay, And then later it'll show up and she'll be like, you didn't tell me. And I'm like, remember that day you were sitting at the bar in the kitchen and you were playing on the phone and I said this? And she's like, I wasn't listening. Oh, that's not my fault.
And I can't count because I have no idea if he told me or not.
And usually I always make sure one of our friends is around to hear it. So they can go, yeah, he told you. You were sitting with
got the evidence.
Do you do this when you're like, all right, she's on the phone. Honey, I'm buying a car. And then she never heard it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You wait till she's on the phone. You're like, all right, she's on it. All right, you ready? Okay. Hey, I just got a new car.
Or if I've done something that I know she's not going to be happy about, I wait till a bunch of people are here or we're around a bunch of people, and then I tell her.
Oh,
Can't get mad at me in
like
public.
at family events, y'all. Family events with clients. He'll just throw, oh, there's another cow coming to the land. Just random stuff that I can't have an opinion about, right?
My first classic car, my Mustang, I told her when she was cooking dinner for the entire family, they were all there, like, hey, I just won this on an auction. It's being delivered next week. Thanks. And I went to walk out.
True story.
What? She couldn't say anything because everybody was there. Thank you.
That's awesome. I love it, man. It's something you don't see it often where you said
No.
it, husband and wife, it's just not a common thing, or you see divorces and stuff. They just didn't get along. And I'm with you guys. I mean, sun up to sundown, and it's fun. I wouldn't want to do it with anybody else. So, let me ask this. So kind of just a couple quick questions here before we bow it out. So I want to talk about deals. Like give me some, I love talking about like maybe could be a mistake that you made or a deal that just kind of burns you. You're like, man, I remember that deal like that. Like, oh yeah.
Longview.
Yeah. Yeah. So what let's hear about
I went
it.
against my model. I went against my model and I bought a multifamily in Longview, East Texas. And it has been the bane of my existence ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it started with a property manager who was really unlicensed and was doing repairs that were never really done. The issue that I just had when we took the old metal roof off that was actually supposed to be a new metal roof, there were 4 layers of shingles underneath it. It's just every little thing. Now, thankfully, we've gutted the whole property and we were doing that anyway, but everything that could be a problem was, and I think where I underestimated is Longview. Longview is, excuse my language, a shithole. Total shithole. And I would never, ever, ever buy it again.
Yeah, I agree. Same deal.
Yeah. Like my renovated 2 bedrooms are $675 after $15,000 renovations. Like, seriously?
And they were that price 4 years ago when we bought it. I mean,
Yeah, no, it's there's a lot of drug use there. There's a lot of low education, and so they just don't have good jobs. They don't hold down jobs. It's not a bad location. It's not a location issue. It's just a Longview issue.
Yeah. It's just a shithole of a place to buy a property.
And I went against my rule. That's the only property I've ever bought that I wouldn't have let a child live in. And I went against the rule. I got the whole property. What did we pay? Like, I don't know, 400,000, 500,000 for the whole 24 unit apartment. So, I mean, it was a good value and I have more money out of it than I have in it. So I've been able to cash out more than what's in it, but it's a bane in my existence. It's always something. I get a call. I'm like, what is it now? And that's kind of the way it is.
You guys still have it? Have you tried to just say let's sell it, or have you?
I do still have it. We are selling it and it'll do really well for someone who's local. The problem for us is it's just too far and I don't want to put someone there. So I hired a guy that lives on site and makes repairs for me, and I've got a home warranty on it. So it's definitely, the last year has been way better, but I don't want to open a full office out there. And that's just not a market I want to be in. And so I think that really, if I had to culminate all of it into where is the biggest problem, it's that's not my market.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any crazy stories as far as whether it's single family?
Yeah.
That's like anything that sticks out. We're like, oh man, that was.
We found people who have been deceased for periods of time. That's always fun.
Oh, we have the Bruja who did the safe passage prayers for the cartel drug lords.
This was a takeover. We put her in there. We took over this property and we go to meet the tenants, and they come up for the first time. And this woman is dressed in all black from head to toe. Her daughter's there. And the woman who's all in all black is the actual tenant. We go to talk to her, and the daughter stops.
No. You're not telling it right. Let me take over. So I go over to introduce myself and shake the lady's hand, and the daughter says, "Do not look at her." I'm like, "What do you mean, do not look at her?" She's like, "You'll be cursed if you look in her eyes." So of course, what do? I look at her eyes, like, "Oh my god, how do you not?" So we come to find out that she's a cartel bruja. And they come to her and she prays for their safe passage with their cargo. So in the garage, they had like
a shop. She had a shop with like display cases, and she had things like goat bones and different dolls that she had made that she would sell to these traffickers who would put them in their vehicles for safe passage to hope that they don't get caught on their journey wherever they were going. And she would have parts of cars that they would take off and replace with something because she would bless that instead. And That was an interesting.
And so then, like, one of our friends, this was before Michael was a cop, he's like, we do quarterly walkthroughs at all of our properties, and this is how we catch stuff like this. And so anyway, long story short, he's like, just, you're gonna have to figure out some way to get them to leave without getting the cartel on you.
Oh gosh.
And there was this period of time where there was a lot of cartel activity after the crash, like 2012 to maybe 2015. The cartel was starting to come up 35. And so we were seeing more of that activity. And so anyway, we just kicked our walkthroughs more frequently, and they left on their own. But same city, these are both in Garland. We had one of our walkthrough guys was a police officer, and he worked for us after hours. And he was doing a walkthrough of a property, and he calls and he says, hey, I need to call in a tip. I think this house is a drug house. And I'm like, why? He says, well, there's a Scarface poster on the wall, and it's the middle of summer, and they're huddled in blankets on the couch. I said, what are you talking about? Why would you possibly think that makes it a drug house? He's like, just trust me. I've been doing this for 20 years. So I'm like, all right, look, if you really think we've got a problem here, let's deal with it. So long story short, the house gets raided. They kick in the front door, and they find two 17-year-old girls chained up in the coat closet. And sure as heck, this guy was like Mr. Ice or Mr. B or some Icebox, some weird name. 20-year-old, perfectly qualified, ran a business. Everything was up and up, great credit. And he was this drug lord that they'd been looking for over 2 years. And we had no idea.
The girls were from somewhere in middle America, like Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa, Nebraska, or something.
Somewhere like that. But they had actually been missing for a while. And they found them as a result of this. So that one was a fun.
Well, and then the owner was so furious that the fire department didn't call for access, but that they actually kicked down the door. They spent the next 2 years fighting the fire department to pay to replace his door. Oh my God. I think they were so tired of hearing from him, they probably paid it themselves, but they paid it. They paid to replace that broken door because he would not let it go.
Yeah, they did.
That same owner divorced his wife. Or his wife left him. She was like a mail order bride or something. And he started parking his RV in the tenant's driveway and sleeping in his RV in the driveway. And the tenant would call us like, what is happening? And we'd and tell him, you can't do this. And he'd keep doing it.
That tenant that moved in was a police officer after the fact, and who rented the house. And there was a day he came home and the owner was sitting on his couch watching TV because he's like, well, y'all want I can let myself in. And of course we terminated that contract.
Oh yeah. We fired that
I can't help this. That was probably one of the interesting.
We had a murder-suicide in South Dallas where the guy killed the girlfriend and then went to shoot himself, but tried to go opposite his heart. He wanted it to look like a break-in, and he didn't know what side his heart was on, so he shot the wrong side. And so the police come and they take the carpet for evidence. We're like, all right, well, we're gonna have to do new carpet, hazmat cleanup, whatever. So we go in there to go replace the carpet after everything is settled. And the police had brought back the carpet that they had cut out with the blood on it and put it back in.
Oh my God.
They told us, don't worry about it. We took up the carpet. You won't have to do that. And we're like, oh, that's great. And so then we start the make ready. And when our guys go in for the make ready, they're like, the carpet's here. And we call them, oh yeah, we put it back.
That's our courtesy carpet patrol.
Not the kind of evidence you want
all right,
returned.
I'll leave you with one more. This one's not really appropriate, but whatever.
Oh no, let it go.
we take over this property, and there's all these faces and handprints on the outside of the sliding glass door.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm going there. And so we take over the property, we get it cleaned, we do the make ready. And this owner he was like hiding income from his wife and had all these apartments through the divorce that she didn't know about. She put him in his mistress's name. It was like a whole really screwed up situation we didn't know in the beginning. A lot of shysters in this industry, in case you didn't know that. So anyway, we get the make ready done and we come back and there's a guy outside and he goes, what happened? Where did the tenants go? And we're like, what are you talking about? And he's like, dang it, we can't watch the sex swing anymore. All the handprints where they were watching them have sex in the living room all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What are those handprints? Those are those handprints.
Yeah. That too was in Garland. So the moral of the story of all of these stories is don't buy rentals in Garland.
That was the same unit that we hired the plumber to replace the water heater.
Oh, and he flipped it over.
He was the older guy. There was a second floor right above it, and he took it. He threw it over the balcony, and it rolled down the hill and hit somebody's car.
Yeah, the owner had this man that he made us use because he was so cheap, and he was replacing the water heater, and he literally threw it over the balcony.
Oh my God!
That's why he was cheap. The disposal was cheap. He said, "Don't,
Um,
don't worry
Free
about the,
disposal.
yeah."
we had a client go into a tenant go into a psychotic break and decide that he wanted to bust up the pool. So in the middle of his personality split, he drained the pool and busted out all the tiles around the coping. We've had
we could write a book on odd stories. We would need a whole nother hour plus
Yeah.
podcast because these are just the tip.
we manage like 1,400 properties even now, and before we scaled back some, we were at 2,400. So if it's going to happen, we've seen it.
Yeah.
That's
Amazingly, we have, knock on wood, only run into a meth house one time, and it was a meth house. My client bought it with somebody else, and that's the only time we've ever run into a meth house.
But we had the
former meth house.
testosterone lab.
We did have a testosterone lab, a Canadian athlete. He was
Yeah.
like former ice hockey player that was selling to kids at Rockwell High School or something.
Oh.
So we had the DEA clandestine lab crew come do that house once. And what's funny is all of these stories are 2012 to 2015.
Yeah.
So that period of time, right as the market was kind of at its low and things were starting to rebound, all of this happened in that same period. Most of the crazy stuff, if you really screen your tenants well and you're in the right properties, you don't run into most of this.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, honestly, is the apartment world.
Yep.
Yeah. Some people don't screen at all. They're just like, "Oh, cool, that's it. Looks good."
Oh, yeah. No,
Cool,
we
man.
took a property on Rieger in Dallas, and like half of them were sex offenders because the property manager before us never screened them.
Yeah.
They also never hooked up the plumbing, so people were just pooping in the walls, but that's a different story.
Oh gosh.
Oh, yeah. No.
Damn.
No.
And then some of it went underneath the crawl space. And so we had to fix the foundation when we took it over. Had a foundation crew out there was like, I'm not going under there.
And then they went to lift it and it almost collapsed on them. Yeah.
Like I said, the stories could continue. and
Yeah.
continue.
You know,
we could do a day of this.
I guess that was a shitty house.
Yeah. You know, I hear the different stories, and I think to myself, I'm like, you know, the one I've never, and we haven't, but the one I've like, the cartel's the one I just don't. I watch too
No,
much shit.
yeah,
I watch too many random things that go, a meth house, some other shit that you, I'm gonna lose some money on it, but I ain't trying to lose my life on that one. Like that's the
No,
one that makes me go, y'all can have that.
I probably spent a good 6 months thinking I'd been cursed. Her eyes were all black. It was the weirdest thing it was a very odd experience.
I don't want the Breaking Bad approach, right? They come to you and they're like, oh, by the way, we need your assistance. You don't have a choice, and this house is now going to be where we house some shit, and it's going to be our stuff.
What was that, Marty Bird?
Yeah, the Marty.
Yeah.
That's Ozark.
Yep.
That's what I don't want. Is I don't want to end up in. We've had that conversation. I don't.
Yep.
I'm like out of all the crazy things, or random repairs, or just fucked up things. That's the one I don't want. I don't want to end up with the Marty Bird, and they're like, yeah, by the way, Christopher Story is now Marty Bird. You need to go do all this. Yeah.
No, it's true. You got to be careful who you rent to.
Yeah. The most and a lot of landlords, man, they just don't. A lot of people just don't screen. They just did that part alone. It would solve 99% of it ahead of time. They're not checking pay stubs. They're not verifying things. They're not trying to actually make sure it's not a fake pay stub. I know you run into that sometimes. There's
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Or they become friends with their tenant, and so then they
yeah.
can't do the emotional thing of kicking them out when they
Oh
need
yeah,
to.
like the one that took the tenant to the grocery store every week. Yep,
Yep.
that one was good. Landlord drove the tenant to the grocery store every week. Even though we managed it, they would still go out there and take that tenant to the grocery store.
We sent them an
every
eviction
week.
notice one time because they hadn't paid by the 10th, and the owner was livid that we would dare send them a late notice.
And then we had the one where the owner had his own handyman. We bought a package of several houses in Blue Ridge, and the handyman would go take this one tenant to the doctor twice a month because he needed a ride to the doctor. So the owner paid the handyman to take the guy to the doctor twice a month.
Man, that's great. Yeah, you got to be heartless, or not care about people, but just you got to use your heart less.
You got to detach.
You
Yeah.
have to treat it like a business.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's the key to it. That's the key to it.
Otherwise you're in trouble. Man, I love it. Let me ask real quick before we bow out here is just talk a little about wealth and rentals, and you guys. I know you've mentioned it, but just for anybody listening, just what you guys do, and kind of I know you know what you do, but kind of talk about that. Just I guess plug or promote, or it's what you guys got going on, or how people can reach you and stuff.
So Wealth and Rentals is a real estate investment education arm. So that's
Mhm.
part of what we own. We do everything from help to co-sponsor bus tours through OmniKey, our real estate and property management company. We hold investment seminars. We hold a small mastermind groups. We even have an elite program, which is a direct mentorship. People can go to wealthandrentals.com to see what we've got going on. We hold those events both here. We also have virtual events that we hold, and then we hold them at different locations. Like we've got some coming up in San Francisco and LA at the end of this month, and then so we'll go out there. We'll do some education. Most of the education conferences are all 100% free. It's just to educate. But again, we then do the bus tours where we educate people on the communities that we invest in, and we take them to available properties with the help of OmniKey Realty, our real estate investment and property management firm. OmniKey Realty is at omnikeytexas.com, and then wealthandrentals.com is our investment education arm. It's also where we house most of our podcasts, and you can hear our radio shows as well on there.
Yeah, we specialize in off-market new construction, and then of course a real estate investment fund for a fully passive model. So a little bit of offering that works for everybody.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it. Well, any parting thoughts you guys want to give? Any parting advice or anything? Or
I would say find your goals and figure out how you get there. That's really it. And at the end of the day, real estate is an amazing avenue to make money. Even if you don't think you can do it, find a mentor, find an education group. You probably can do a lot more than you think you can.
Mhm.
And it's a good way to make almost passive income and sustainable income regardless of the economy. You can build your own economy by doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I loved having you guys on. We'd love to bring you back on some other time as well. Great stories. Love the husband. I love the husband-wife team. Like I said,
Mhm.
you don't see it often. To me, that's a big deal. So some people, someone's out there is probably listening to me like, I want to work with my wife, and someone else is probably like, hell no, I don't want to do it. But for those that do, that are like all of us here, it's definitely possible. So, well, thank you guys for coming on. Thank you for taking the time, and
Yep.
appreciate it. And guys, that's the show, and we'll catch you guys next time.
And go figure out where you're gonna eat lunch.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
All
guys.
right, guys, we'll see y'all later.
Bye.
Thanks.